It's well known. There are only two circumstances under which one drinks vintage port. They are when one is not doing major house refurbishment, and the other circumstance is, well, the punchline is obvious. I'm here to do a reading from the first edition of port vintages, but before I must do a little salesmanship for the second. The first is the most complete compendium of information ever written on vintage port, but it was missing some things. The second edition will have about 100 extra ports missing from the first. It will have many new bottlers, many new bottlings, some by those bottlers, some by others, and it will have about 100 more pictures and about 60 more pages. It will be even more. It's a big book. Such a book describes many auctions. Auctions are something that big data source for me, but my favourite auction comes from June 1859, and it was written about in 1862, and I'm on page 563 of the first edition. It'll be page about 610, precise number not known, of the second edition. The event of the day, however, was the Magnums, and 3 or 4 lots disposed of, as they were now about to come off. They represented under the head of bin 16, and were to all other parcels what the Derby is to all other races at the Epsom. The Magnums bin was the blue ribbon of the seller. An anxious flutter was perceptible amongst the company when the great lot was to come, and as the horses are walked up and down for show before the race, so was the empty bottle from which the sample of wine was drawn, carried round to the company by the auction porter, that they might see the crust, solid as a rock, sir. A Magnum bottle is certainly a grand object, and impresses us with the bibulous stature of our grandfathers, reminding one of the time when there were giants in the land with gigantic thirsts. I try. I can't meet those standards. 31 Magnums, full, 2 quarts each of splendid old port. The Doctor. Vintage 1820, bottled in 1823, Lax & Co. Read out Mr. Fergus from the catalogue, adding, "What shall I say as a starting bid?" £2 a bottle, said a gentleman in lavender-coloured gloves. Pretty well for a beginning, thought I. I would rather be the guest than the host when this vintage is decanted. At such a price it is no French compliment to say one would sooner see one's friends drink the wine than drink it oneself. But the author of the first offer was a long way from the Doctor. The northern interest from the other side of the table rose in its might. Manchester spread out its cotton wings, and Liverpool unfurled its sails to the wind. £2 5 shillings, cried the sandy-whiskered man, looking as fierce as though he had resolved that the Governor and Company of the Bank of England should not separate him from the Doctor. A gentleman from Bristol, said to have a commission for Baron Rothschild, next bid £2 10 shillings. But this northern flight flared up and nodded £2 15 shillings. A Londoner, half afraid he'd get it, whispered £3. And at this unprecedented sum there was a general buzz or murmur of wonder amongst the company, which induced the northern man to cry out, "Is it against me?" "Yes, sir," replied Mr. Fergus. "3 guineas, then," was the rejoinder. London nodded £3 4 shillings, but Lancashire would have it. He called out £3 8 shillings, and he had it, and it is to be hoped it will agree with him. All the other lots, 4 bottles each, went down before his determined nod at the same price, and when anyone else made an offer of any at all, the Hyperborean capped him with an additional 5 shillings, calling out to his competitor at the same time in a Doric tongue, "Not a drop of it, sir." That's probably my favourite auction in the book.